Hello everyone. Today I thought I would just give you a little insight into how I mix colour. And I mix colour by mixing it on the paper or on my brush. I rarely mix colour in my palette. And the main reason for that is that if you mix colour in the palette and say you want to get a nice green, well yes, you can get a very nice green, but it will be a flat colour, and you can get all sorts of different combinations, and actually you can get magic happening if you mix on the paper rather than in the palette, because you get much livelier mixes. And just to illustrate that point, I'm going to mix some paint in the palette to show you, and then mix it on the paper. And I hope it shows up on this, because sometimes if I'm doing this to an art group and they're filming it, it doesn't always show, and I have to send the paper around with everybody afterwards to for them to actually see the effects that I get on the paper. So two colours I'm going to mix here. This is a Winsor & Newton Burnt Sienna and Winsor & Newton Prussian Blue. And I'm going to mix them together on my palette, and I'm going to show you in the palette the colour that it's made, and then you can compare. So if I just show you this colour now, it's a browny green colour, depending on how much brown I put in. It's a sort of earthy sort of colour. Not quite a neutral, but it's a very earthy colour. So let's just pop that on the paper. You can see it. Okay, so that is the colour that you will get. Now, if I mix on the paper, this is what happens. I always explain I don't actually paint in blobs like this. I'm just doing this as an illustration to show you the effect that you can get by mixing on the paper rather than in your palette. So these are the same colours I'm using, Burnt Sienna and Prussian Blue. What you have to do is touch the paint all the way around. Paint will only flow when it's wet. So I'll just illustrate that for you in a moment, but you need the paint to be wet. So can you see I've got white spaces there? All I need to do is drop some water in and let the paint flow. Okay, I can drop a little bit more of the Burnt Sienna in there. Now, can you see the difference of the two effects? And what you get when you mix paint like this, you get both the brown, the blue, and every colour in between. Just to show you that paint doesn't flow unless it's wet, just watch what happens now. If I put some water there, can you see nothing is happening? You can't even see the water. Watch what happens when I just touch. Okay? So paint flows where it's wet. So if I put more blobs down here, nothing's going to happen. And when I do this, I'm using the paint fairly concentrated but wet. Okay, nothing's going to happen there. If I touch more paint into it, then it starts to flow and it starts to mix and mingle. But mixing paint like this on the paper will give you far more happy accidents than you ever get by mixing paint like this one. Can you see the difference? Well, I hope you can. I'm just looking at it from on top of the iPad, and I can see that it's showing a great difference in the effects. Now, I can't imagine why you'd prefer to paint like this rather than like this. I'm not saying I never mix colour in the palette. If I'm looking for a very specific colour, I may well mix in the palette. But generally, I would mix paint like this. The other way to mix paint on the brush, so I'll just show you this on here. Can we all see that? Yeah. So I dip in and I've got some paint on that side of my brush, and then I'll dip in again and I've got some of the other colour on the other side of my brush, and I will just apply it. Now, as I say in the classes, I've no more idea than you have how this is going to turn out, but I'll just lay it on and then you can see. So I need a bit more brown in that. Put a bit more in both colours. There we go. And what happens is you get much more interesting effects, just dropping some water in there, than you will ever get by mixing in the palette. And the other thing is, you will never be able to do these things with your brush. Let's drop a bit more brown in. So you'll never get those effects happening just by using paint that's been mixed in the palette. It's just not possible to do. What you've got to do is have a little bit of faith that the water and the paint are going to do the job for you. And what happens in my classes, people observe that I don't use the brush a lot. I let the paint and the water do the work. So that, in essence, is how I mix colour in the main, not in the palette. Now, the other issue that people always ask me about is, how do I choose the colours for any particular painting? And I only ever paint with 3 or 4, probably at the most 5 different colours in any one painting. And there's a good reason for that. Well, there are 2 reasons for that. One, it takes away all the decision-making process, because I choose the paint colours before I actually start to paint. And after that, I know those are the colours I'm using, and I don't have to make any further decisions halfway through a painting where I might be feeling rushed, or I might be needing to find a colour quickly because the paint's drying and I need to add some more colour. I already know which colours I'm using, and I only use those, so I make all my secondary colours out of those. The second reason is that it helps to harmonise the colour around your painting. So you're not introducing new colours, and especially when you're mixing colour on the paper, like this, it means that you can actually get all sorts of different colours, because you get from yellow to blue, you get all the different yellow greens and green blues, and you also get the first 2 primary colours as well. You get a whole array of colours mixing, but you're not introducing any other colours to it. So if you're choosing 3 primary colours and you're choosing any sort of blue, red and yellow, if you stick with those 3 colours, you get all the different colours in between, all the secondaries, all the tertiary colours, but you're not introducing a foreign colour into the mix. So, for example, I might choose, and I am quite random about choosing colours. Sometimes I'll just think to myself, oh, I've not used that colour for a while, or I've not used that colour for a while, I'll use them on this particular painting. So I might think I'll use some Opera Rose. Let's see what that looks like. So let's have some Opera Rose. Now, Opera Rose, it's a gorgeous colour, but it's a bit fugitive. So if you want your paintings to last for many years, then perhaps it's not the best colour to use. But this is just to illustrate how we can go about things. And I might choose some Green Gold. These are Winsor & Newton colours, artist quality. Again, I'm just touching into those. Green Gold's a lovely colour because it goes from quite a sort of olive green to a very, very vibrant yellow. And let's put a little bit of, is that indigo there? No, it's purple. I don't think I've got indigo in this palette. I'm actually using my travel palette for this because my other palette's in the garage. So let's put that in. That's quite strong, isn't it? And that's all starting to flow. Now, can you see all the white spaces in between? You can't see that at all, can you? There we go. You see all those white spaces in between? I just need to drop water in and encourage it all to mix. You see that? Let's just move it around a little bit. And I might have a look at that and think, oh, I think it might need something else. Or I might think, no, it's looking very nice. Can you see all the different colours happening there? Now, what I'm going to do next to it is just mix those colours again in the palette. And it just depends what quantities you use of each as to what sort of secondary or tertiary colour you'll get. But this is what I'm getting now. Okay, that's the colour from mixing those colours together. And I'll just prove it to you by going in and mixing some at the bottom here, and you'll see how that then becomes that. Oh, it's a bit bluer. There's a bit more pink in that area. There you go. Can you see that? And how I've lost all the beautiful colours there compared to there. So that's how I mix colour. Now, the thing about doing this, what you have to do is make sure that you choose something which will give you a very good dark. Because if you're only choosing 3 colours, you need one of those colours to give you the full tonal value. So that could be, in my palette, I have, let me just make sure you can see this. So I have ultramarine blue and very concentrated. It's a good dark. I've got Prussian blue, which again is a good dark. I've got Phthalo turquoise, which again, a good dark. This is permanent alizarin crimson. Again, it's a bit of a fugitive colour, but I do use the permanent version, which is a different pigment number to the fugitive one, and this is purple. Okay, so any of those 5 colours, and also indigo, the browns, so you could have sepia or burnt umber. They're not colours I tend to have in my palette because you can make good browns by mixing purple and burnt sienna. That will give you a good brown. And ultramarine blue, you see that's a good brown. Ultramarine blue and burnt sienna as well. So I don't find the need to have those browns in my palette, but they will also give you a good tonal value of dark. So when you're choosing, when you have a subject, you can actually choose any colours, and the colours that you choose can often dictate the atmosphere of the painting. So if you want a bright sunny day, then you might choose, and a spring day for example, you might choose a lemon yellow, you might choose a Prussian or a turquoise, and those 2 colours together will give you the bright greens that you will have in a spring scene, you know, that really vivid acid green colour. If you want a much more muted dull down version, then you can of course go to ultramarine blue and raw sienna, and they will give you really muted earthy green tones. So when you're choosing your colours, if you want to portray something, then bear that in mind, but also bear in mind that you have to have something which will give you a dark, because basically it's the darks and the tonal value in your painting that will make or break the painting, not the colour. So that's a bit about colour mixing. What I do is I often make what I call these colour planets. So that would be a colour planet. So I often make these before I choose my colours. So here's another couple of examples that I can do for you.